Right. Okay. So good morning, folks. Jenny Milne here at the helm, but with Matt helping out. Um, I'm really grateful for everybody turning up today. Genuinely, I am. This is a cafe that we haven't had since June. We're coming back after the summer holidays, and talking with communities is what we're all about. And this is a very popular cafe. For those of you that haven't been to a cafe before, it is very much about being interactive and coffee and cake, which I'll come back to in a minute. If you could just mute yourselves at the beginning, just so that you can hear from the three communities that have joined us. But if you could introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great. And when you're introducing yourself, a bit of a new thing, could you just add the first few bits of your postcode? And that's just to be able to help us analyze where people are coming from, what areas they're coming from. And that also helps us with funding applications that we've got as well. And if you're not based in the UK, can you let us know you're not based in the UK? Because quite often we have people from overseas as well. It's about sharing ideas. It's about being supportive to one another. And I think today's lineup of people and communities will be just about that. What I have got is cake, and the one thing I've been allowed to do is do a small amount of baking. So we've got loads of apples, like probably everybody else. So I've got apple muffins sitting in my hand here. So I'm just going to quickly go through and see if anybody's actually holding up a cake, because this is, after all, a cafe. So is there any cake, or anybody with a banana, or anybody with an apple or something? Or is it just me that's the greedy person as I'm going through? Oh, Tony, what have you got there? You've appeared. Tony, what have you got? Is it chocolate? Because in that case, I'm very envious. No, he's shaking his head. Tony, what is it? Unmute yourself.
Just a rich tea.
That's too healthy. Anybody else there? I can't see. Ah, Jamie's got his hot cross bun. Well, I'm surprised it's not a mince pie, Jamie, because we're getting towards Christmas. Are you saving that for later in the year? Yeah, nodding. Okay, anybody else got something there as I'm going through? I'm going, oh, people are drinking tea and coffee. That's fine. There's always going to be a bit different. And I see the chat's going live here, so that's great. For those of you that haven't been to a cafe before, SRITC was something I created because of my frustrations and lack of bringing people together that talk about transport in a rural context, particularly from a community perspective upwards. So today is a complete showcase of what SRITC is about. We have a huge amount of resources. We're here to help, but we aren't full-time workers. This is very much our job on the side to our day jobs. With that in mind, we are about trying to change what's going on in rural transport in the moment, particularly from a community perspective. And we are quite a collective voice. We're about over 500 people, and we had about 100 odd in person in Bodegarten in May, which was cracking. Some of the recent things we've been doing is particularly focusing on UK and Scottish consultations that have been out, and actually our evidence to the Transport Committee has just been published, which is nice to see. So rural was actually taken into the fold on that one. So there's my cakes and coffee at the side there. What I probably just want to highlight is over the last couple of months, as we're all volunteers as well, coming into this, we have an advisory board, we have musketeers who people help out behind the scenes. The advisory board and musketeers have come together, and they're looking at the strategy and how we go through what is known as a theory of change, and how we can actually make, as a collective, not just the team, but all of you there, what can the strategy look like, and how can we make change going forward, particularly in Scotland with the up and coming rural delivery plan. So that's been under revision. Matt and Alex have been looking at the issues of procurement, because SRITC needs to be able to bring in some funding. So we are looking at not only applying for grant funding to be able to secure our future, but also whether we can start bidding and being part of bids of other people going forward. So we're working through that. So if anybody knows of any way to bring in SRITC to some of the projects they're working on, that would be great. As some of you know, we've got the Scottish Rural and Island Parliament taking place in Fort William. That's the 1st to the 3rd of November. You can come online or you can come in person. SRITC are in charge of the whole transport theme. We're curators for that. And we're going to have, hopefully, everything from Emma, who's here today with bikes, talking about what's going on in Loch Arbor, all the way through to some drones. And I will keep some of the other bits and pieces under wraps. But in the usual fashion, it won't be death by PowerPoint. You may have had a MailChimp preference email come in. If you haven't seen it, maybe check your spam. But we're just going through and clearing out, because obviously under GDPR, as we've grown, so has the information of people that we've got. So if you haven't had anything through, and you don't want to miss out on the news bulletins or on cafe news flashes, can you just please email the SRITC email address, which the team will put in the chat, because you will get taken off if you haven't already completed that preferences. Before I hand over to communities, I've got a question from one community that couldn't be here today. And that's from Nethy Bridge, which is very close to where we had the gathering back in May. They've got a community centre. They've got 15 kilowatts of solar panels being put on, and they've now got 3 Tesla batteries. They would like to know how they could go forward and get an EV charging station. So it would be great if we could come away today with a solution for them, or some suggestions or some ideas or contacts. So that's a plea from them. If you're a community that's joined us today, please do put any questions that you want answers to in the chat, because that's what we're here to do. So I'm going to hand you over, and they're going to then hand each other over. We're going to start to hear from Liz, and Liz is probably, I get quite emotional about Liz, and she knows this. She's probably not missed a cafe since we ever started back in 2020 with cafes online. And I'll let her tell you in her own words what being part of the SRITC community has meant. We're then going to shoot to Aberdeenshire, and we're going to hear from Keith. And then we're sort of going to Stuart, who's actually based in Wales on 5G at the moment, so it's a bit glitchy, so don't worry about it. But actually he lives in, well, north of Orkney, actually, on an island. So you've got 3 great communities, and they're going to hand over to each other, so I don't have to speak. So Liz, you're going to share for the first time. Liz has never done anything online, so I'm really grateful for taking the brave pill to do this. And she's now going to share for the first time ever, and I don't think there's anybody else in this cafe that has ever been in this situation over the last 3 years that hasn't shared slides. So it didn't work earlier. I'm going to do it because it just wasn't happening, was it, Liz? But I'll hand over to, wrong slides. I'll hand over to you, Liz, and you can introduce yourself. You might need to unmute yourself, Liz. Why is it? Oh, I'm going to have to shut. Won't allow me to have 2 open at the same time. Liz, unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, folks. I'm Liz Nicholson. I'm the chair of a micro charity on West Loch View. We were formed to take in, to take on board for the community the primary school, which was mothballed in 2012 by Highland Council, and we formed in 2015 to take it over and to try and help with rural isolation, to provide somewhere to bring people together. And we're strung out along a 9-mile stretch of West Loch View. There were only 180 people here at the last census, not the last one, sorry, I should say 2011 census. We're a community now that has, like a lot of other rural communities, absolutely no public transport unless we get to Pool U, which for our furthest people on our side of the loch is 9 miles away. You have to be there at 8:10 in the morning to get your bus if you want to go east where the big places are, or you have to go out on a, I think it's a Wednesday if you want to go to Dingwall, or a Thursday if you want to go to Ullapool. So we're, as I say, we're a tiny, tiny little micro charity. We were lucky enough to bring the school into ownership in 2018, late 2018, got funding to improve the building, or at least that ended up only being part of the building due to costs, etc. But it's the transport, it's getting people to us that's the problem. Can we go on, Jenny, till I show people where we are? Please. Okay, you can see on the map of Scotland, we're out on the northwest. It is a remote rural settlement. From where I'm sitting, which is right in the middle of the place, it's 5 miles to the nearest shop. The nearest supermarket, and that's a silly name to give it really, because it's quite a small one, is Tesco in Ullapool. We're obviously in Wester Ross in the Highlands. An absolutely beautiful place. It's gorgeous, but it's got its challenges. Jenny, can I get the next one, please? You can see we run the old Inverasdale Schoolhouse tea room. You can see at the end of the side of our north side of our north part of the west side of the loch, we have the Arctic Convoy Memorial. Some of you will perhaps know that during the Second World War, there was a naval base on the east side of the loch, and many, many convoys went from this area. In fact, there was a big chain across the loch to keep out the Germans, etc., etc. But lots of people come down this road to view the memorial. If we go back up the road, here, Jenny's let us see the school. I actually live more or less across the road from the school and schoolhouse. We've got loads of space there that we want to develop. I mean, we'd like to have an electric charging point, etc., etc. Where the funding's coming from, I don't know. We've got a little bit of bike parking. We're going to develop on that. But right now, we're all volunteers. We don't have someone, you know, in place as a development officer. And there's a long story to that, part of which was the 2 years of pandemic and 2 years of renovation. Okay, Jenny, can we go forward now? So this is what the school building looks like. It has a schoolhouse at the end of it, hence you can see the door opening to go into the ground floor, which is the tea room. The community wished us to start the development with that and to get a kitchen, because there was no kitchen before. So we're hoping, well, we already are serving the community, but we're also serving visitor. We've done that before. And we want to get people, we want to find ways of getting people down this road. And for some of the more elderly members of the community, especially, to be able to go up the road more frequently, to go to Poyu, not always depending on our wonderful Gairloch community car scheme, who operate on volunteers and a couple of admin people. They do runs up and down the area, but it's a during the day thing. You cannot get a car scheme car to go somewhere in the evening, not easily anyway. And we also have to go out of here on hospital cars to go and get any treatment or go to attend a clinic in Inverness. And as I've said to you, it's 1 day a week. Here are some of our older people in the community enjoying, well, they were just finishing their lunch when that picture was taken. So we have a lot of requirements to be helped, I think, to get more transport to this area. Where there's a threat against, this is what it looked like a long time ago, sorry, there's a threat on our school transport as well. It's only minibuses and it's Gairloch Community Car Scheme that run those nowadays, because they're not profitable enough for local businesses. So I'm open to anyone getting in touch with me at any time to put me on the right track. But it's been wonderful to attend all these cafes. It's been just super to know what's going on in the world to address the problems of rural transport. It's given me a huge lift. And, you know, seeing Jenny, who is so supportive and positive, it's really great. I mean, I think SRITC, I can never say it, SRITC are doing a wonderful job. Thank you very much. And I think I now have to ask Keith to come on board And it's lovely to meet you two and everyone else. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Bye.
Thank you. That's
Okay.
great. Actually, now that you've been through your presentation, I obviously had seen it beforehand. I actually have been in your neck of the woods. Actually, a few years ago, I bought an aga, and it was at Cove that I had to go out to pick it up from, which is
Oh my
just along the road
goodness.
from you. So that was quite the journey. I had not appreciated how heavy an aga actually was. But it was quite a beast of a thing. But it's a lovely part of the world that you stay in. It's beautiful. Just to give you some headway on who I am. So I think I did have to do postcodes. I can't remember what that one was. Basically, my name is Keith Duncan. I stay in rural Aberdeenshire, relatively close to Aberdeen. We're about 25 miles away from Aberdeen itself, closer to the village, or sorry, the town of Inverurie, which is a population of, I think it's about 20,000, something like that. I think it's somewhere about there. So that's basically our main connection. Our focus. So basically, my position, I'm a member of the Zero Carbon Deviate. It was a group set up by some local members of the community that are really they're involved in, so they take an active part in basically it's about energy conservation. So really the focus of our group is mainly about if energy efficiency, looking at our homes, looking at how we can retrofit homes and so on. But part of the remit of that is really about how we basically adjust our lifestyles and so on accordingly. So our journey, our challenge with transport is really more about trying to encourage a different way of getting people to think about their transport, to make those journey swaps effectively, so that they're not necessarily going to the car. We actually have a bus service here. We have 2 bus services run, so I think we have maybe 6 buses or so going through the village on a daily basis. Times that you wouldn't necessarily align with, like things like local like train services, so they're not joined together. So that's a little bit of a problem. But we do have these connections, so that's a good thing. So really our challenge was to try and see how can we make people make more use of the roads to cycle to Inverurie, which is our main sort of shopping town and so on. To that end, there's a community nearby, and they probably have been on here before. I'm sorry, this is my first time here, and I'm kind of stepping in for one of our other members who's unfortunately is not able to attend today. So we reached out to Huntly Development Trust, that you've probably been on before. I'm sure Jenny can confirm. You've got the nodding head. Okay, that's good. So they've done an awful lot in terms of the transportation. They've got things like car shares. They've got e-bikes and so on for the community. So we wanted to do a pilot on that. So back in 2021, we borrowed some bikes from them effectively, and we set up a small shed connected to our local village cafe. So it's a little shop that we have in the village, and basically we would run from there the hiring out of the bikes. So we ran a pilot for just over a month or so, just to sort of see how that would work out, and it went very, very well, and we were encouraged by the findings of that. So subsequently, we kind of we spoke about how we might pursue this and see if we could engage with it. A lot of the people that did come along to try out the bikes generally really enjoyed the experience. A lot of them just put them on turbo and never cycled at all, which is it's absolutely fine, except for some of them ended up being stuck in rural locations with no charge, which is to be expected. So I think you've got to balance the books with that. But a lot of them then use that as kind of impetus to go off in this and buy their own e-bikes or to get more mobile, which is great. We actually want to encourage the sort of the health message as well. And we're very fortunate where we are that we've got relatively good road networks. There's lots of places that you can go here and pretty much traffic free. It doesn't sound like it. We were actually quite a busy part of the world, but once you go kind of across those main channels, roads around us, then it does get quite quiet. I've actually had a friend who moved down to down to the Edinburgh area, and is really disappointed because now when he goes out on his bike, he has to basically channel his way through all sorts of traffic and whatnot. So anyway, when we decided to go for funding for this, we actually applied to 3 separate organisations, to the Energy Saving Trust, to Cycling Scotland, and also to Nestrans as well, and hope that one of those bids would actually come through. And as it turned out, all 3 bids came through, but the funding and the support that was given was better from Cycling Scotland. So that was the one that we actually went with, and we purchased 3 bikes. Now, alongside that, we also had to think about the story about how we were going to maintain those bikes and the logistics about getting those out to customers and so on, and people who are wanting to try them. The promotion story has been a little bit of a challenge. We've put out, we had a launch event that I think, Jenny, you were in attendance with, and that was also more about just transport in general. It was a launch for the e-bikes, but it was talking about a whole range of other areas. We've recently had a dial-a-bus service effectively in the local area that's been taken away. So we're trying to find alignment for how to support those journeys. So the e-bikes we purchased, we got all the equipment associated with those as well. And part of that was also getting a locker. So we have this really large bread bin, if you want to imagine it, that can hold 3 bikes, and you can lift it up, and inside are all the bikes. Now, unfortunately, the launch event, by the time that we got everything sort of sorted out, it was kind of into the summer, and it was quite challenging to find volunteers to do the transfers, to get people up and running. There's a little bit of a handoff in getting people going with the journeys. But what we really found was that the challenge was more about, so apart from people actually just sort of trying the new experience of using an e-bike, they weren't really doing sort of journey swaps. And I think that the challenge there is because we do have some, although we've got some really good, so you can go off and do all sorts of adventures, the actual main journey that we would want to try and substitute is our journey to the nearest town in Inverurie. And for that, we've got to go through some fairly horrible traffic. There is a short section that would actually allow us to connect to them. And we've been in discussions for about the last 3 or 4 years or so to try and make that happen. But landowners kind of get in the way and want planning gain and so on. So it kind of knocks the journey, it pushes it down the road in terms of us getting that linked road. Once we can get that, we're pretty much within about half a mile or so of having an end-to-end connection between ourselves and Inverurie. And as a cyclist myself, I don't enjoy the journey. Most of like I say, most of the journey is fine. There's a small section of maybe half a mile or so that is horrific, and even at the best of times, it feels like you're going to get killed any moment. So it's a horrible thing to have. In addition to that, we also did a cycle leader training. So 3 members of the local community also did a Cycling Scotland training course. So that was really to try and encourage people who maybe weren't so confident on going out on a bike. If they wanted to, they could sort of go out on a lead ride in the local area, just to sort of show them the kind of routes that you can do. We've got a really lovely 10-mile circuit around here that's very accessible. It's a quick way to build confidence. The problem is, of course, that not unless you actually have an e-bike, you quite often find that people are bolting ahead of you, which can be a bit of a challenge. So overall, I'll just see, I've got a couple of other notes around this. So we had our launch event. Let's see now, what else? So we're really been a little bit disappointed by the uptake in it, and hopefully we're going to try and do some more promotion around it. But I think that we're kind of faced with the challenge of getting the road network is the single biggest thing that's been kind of holding us back. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that we had. I think that's basically it. I think we so just wanted to sort of share that experience that we've had. So I'd say that for we had kind of made the expectation that this would become a regular thing that people would make use of. In reality, it tends to be more of an experiment. People will tend to will try an e-bike. They'll either decide whether they like one or not, and on that basis they may purchase one. But the actual use of the e-bikes, in our experience, and again, there's limitations about journey routes and so on, has not been as well taken up as we expected it to. But I would definitely encourage the use of a trial to sort of see what the uptake is. But don't base your decision on whether or not that's an ongoing thing. But certainly the trial went much better. What we've also found, one other thing, is that other communities in the local area have also done similar schemes with different hardware, so there's not a connection between them. And they've had to reduce their prices quite a bit. So we started off with, like, I think it was £10 a day for a hire of a bike. We've now had to go down to £5 a day. So just because other communities were also doing likewise. So the return on that is going to be a little bit lower. And again, even with that, the uptake has been quite low. So just to kind of make an observation about where we've been with it. Okay, and now I shall pass on to Stuart.
Oh, before we switch over to Stuart, just one question from me, and also a note that we're going to do a poll/questionnaire. So Irina, if you want to launch that first one, that would be great. And then Keith, I'm sure we'll come to the questions, but just one of the things that while people are answering those polls is, do you have any numbers or rough numbers on how many people then went out and purchased their own e-bikes after trialing the one in the area? Because that seems to be like quite a big win, even if they're not using the actual sort of community bikes as well, if people are purchasing their own.
Yeah, we're certainly aware of about sort of 10 people or so who took the trial, who then subsequently went on and bought e-bikes as well. Again, it's one of those things where there's a lot of uptake in e-bikes, and certainly for certain journeys. And also, I think it's great that people are going out and using their bikes. I think that we've seen local members of the community who tried the e-bike scheme who didn't cycle before at all, and now are they'll regularly do our sort of main sort of 10-mile circuit. You'll see them out there all the time, which is great to see. But a lot of people buy them on the basis that it's kind of a bit like buying a rowing machine or whatever. They're going to get fit and so on, in which case it potentially becomes e-junk. So I don't know if necessarily that's a story that's it's not the ideal story for that. But that's the nature of things, I suppose.
Yeah, that's helpful. I don't think we'll go through all the queries in one go, Irina, just if this is the second one coming through. But yeah, if you'd like to introduce the next
Yeah, sure. So that's Stuart who's going to pick up from me.
Okay, thanks very much. I've got less than 1 minute left, so I'll rattle through this very quickly. But
I have more than that. I'll give you the 5.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay,
give you the
thank
5.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. So I'm Stuart Williams. I'm from Rose, Eggleston and Wyre, which might not be where you know very much, but we'll come back to that. I'm speaking to you from Llandovery today. So a bit about me. I've been in transport for quite a while. I managed the world's first heritage railway for a number of years before moving to Orkney. I was also involved in the Cambrian Rail Partnership. I was the chairman of that and launched Wales on Rails, which is a very successful sort of community transport scheme for tourism and everything else. So I've got a lot of railway in my background, and now I have nothing to do with railways whatsoever because there's nothing anywhere even close to railways in Orkney. So where am I? Rose, Eggleston and Wyre, 3 remote islands off the Orkney mainland. I have to watch my P's and Q's now because I see there's a few Orkney people here. Hi, Anne. Just making sure my facts are right. I overlook E-Day, but we are quite a well connected island from mainland. But yes, fairly remote. We're talking 260 people between the 3 islands. Wyre has 11 people, Eggleston has 26, and Rosey has about 230. So yeah, not many people. That's a good picture of it. It's very windy. It's got lots of stone. It's got no trees, so I can't have apple muffins today because I've got no apples. Down here. So what do? We've got wind turbine, which provides an awful lot of does good work for us. That was installed in 2007, and that churns away quite nicely and provides a nice drop of income. And it is very windy, so it's very efficient up there. We've got the Rosey is actually known as the Egypt of the North, which is quite something because it's got so many brochs and archaeology sites. So if you ever want to come, it's fantastic. And we do have a lot of cute seals, one of these in the UK. The Northlink ferry is better than Kelmac and works from Scrabs to Stromness, which is about an hour and a half, or Aberdeen to Kirkwall, which is more we call the boisterous crossing, and is 5 hours, but it does take a bit of driving up the way. We've also got an independent company called Pentland Ferries, and they run from Gills Bay, which is John O'Groats, into St Margaret's Hope. They have 2 ferries. We usually have the Alfred, but that's on the west coast doing backup to try and get them out of the poo at the moment. So we've got the Pentalina, but they do get a little bit of trouble, and that's the lifeboat is not always with it, but it does have quite a regular a visit to Pentalina because it ran aground the other day. So it does leave us with quite a fragile way of getting to mainland Orkney. but you can fly, and there are Loganair run flights from those 4 airports, and there's a new direct, I say direct because it stops in Dundee, but direct Kirkwall to London Heathrow, which I used the other day. It ain't EasyJet, it ain't cheap, but it is quite efficient. It was sort of over £300 return, but so that's the main routes in, and then we've got the smaller planes on top which do the shuttle runs to the Northern Isles. So here are the island layout. You'll see Orkney mainland, which always gets confusing. Hoy, Rosay, Ugsley Wire, and Shapnezay are sort of the near islands. They get a very good ferry service. And then you've got the Northern Isles, Westray, Sanday, North Ronandsay, Papa Westray, Ide, and Stronsay. Use these old ferries, and it's a fair old step up there, so to say. But they do have the little airports if you want to take your heart in your head and have a bit of a interesting flight. So Rosay itself, we've got the Einhallow, which is a 1987 ferry, and this is our bread and butter. As you can see, once you get a JCB on there and a couple of trailers, it's pretty full. So it's a 9-vehicle ferry. So it really is quite tight for getting on and off the island, and it runs 6 round trips a day. So we can get on and off, that's fine. And on the bottom right-hand corner is a Shapnezay, so we get that one in the summer when it's peak season, and that takes 16 vehicles. So you can see that tourism on the island is quite a struggle, because if we promote a lot of tourism, it takes the spaces for the people that need to get on and off. You can go as a foot passenger, and that's what we want to sort of promote. But yeah, it's amazing how your mindset changes when you're tied to a ferry. We do have buses, but they're only on the mainland, and you can see that Stagecoach run a fairly good sort of system that links up with the ferries. Unfortunately, they renewed the contract in early 21 and didn't go for electric buses, which I thought would have been fantastic for Orkney, because it's very short shuttle trips, but I'm sure we'll have those falling apart before we see an electric bus on Orkney. So the Outer Isles have their own bus services, and this is all community based. There's nothing done by the council, so it's down to the development trusts, and there's 11 development trusts on Orkney, which do a fantastic job of actually providing the get up and go. So these are some of the sort of buses we see on the northern and most remote islands. Here is a picture of Rosay's community transport bus service, because we don't have one. We have it's a 13-mile round island, and we don't have any public transport at all. So the Development Trust does have a car share. So we have a Nissan Leaf, which has been a car club for quite a few years, and I've basically turned it into a dial ride service now. I got a bit of funding from Orkney Council, and we basically go and pick people up and take them to the post office and the shop, which are not next to each other and not even near to the ferry. So if you don't have a vehicle on Rosay, you really do struggle. And then we take that into Kirkwall twice a month now. And it's proving very popular, so it's given us some good sort of data that we can use to try and find something like this. We're looking for a midi van, really, that can be wheelchair accessible, and you can get these 100% EWAV vans, which we're trying to get funding through Motability and some other schemes, which would be very good. So about 7-seater, which would be ideal for us. E-bikes are quite a big thing on most of the islands. Rosay would be very good because it's a very hilly island. I've been around on my push bike, and it was a experience I didn't want to really replicate that quickly. I've got an application in with EST to get some e-bikes, and that's 50-50, sort of using it for tourism to get people to leave their cars on the mainland and come back as a foot passenger and explore the island, and then to look at modal shift for residents on the islands, because I don't know if you know, but on an island, if you haven't got an MOT station, you don't actually need an MOT on your car. So you can drive around Rosay in what I can only describe as a banger with no MOT on. It's just got to be roadworthy. But seeing as the police can't exactly make a surprise visit to the island, because the crew on the ferries wave a flag when they're on the ferry, and suddenly the road's clear of all this scrap stuff. You've never seen such thing. So I'm trying to get people to leave their uneconomical bangers and move on to nice e-bikes. That's the project I've got ongoing. And then a bit about the future. We've just had very exciting news, because the Zero Emission Vessels and Infrastructure Fund has granted Orkney 15.5 million to set up some new ferries. and they're going to be electric ferries built by Artemis, who are the people who do the Admiral's Cup, and they're going to be hydrofoils, 40 knots, and we're all a little bit, my God, is this actually going to work? But it is happening, and it's going to be taking us straight into Kirkwall, so it will be quite exciting. There's only 12 people, but we'll have a go and everything. And then there's a bigger ferry that's coming spring next year to do Rosie, Egglesay and Wyre and Chappensay, and then there's a bigger ferry going to do the Northern Isles the end of next year. I think we'll believe it when we see it, but it is coming. And then the bottom right hand is a mock-up of a hydrogen ferry, because we're very good at hydrogen in Orkney. In fact, we have got a lot of green energy projects going on, and one of them is you might have heard of Surf and Turf, but it's where my colleague Anne and Ide can see that the turbine is used to hydrolysize water and turn it into hydrogen, and then that's actually shipped from the Outer Isles into Kirkwall, and that then is powering vans on the island. It's powering the shore-based ferries when Kirkwall Airport. So we really are probably ahead of the game in a lot of ways on hydrogen. It's quite exciting. And then we've got some other harebrained schemes going on in Orkney. We seem to get all the people turn up with their madcap ideas. We've got the Airlander blimps that is looking at freight and passenger transport. We've got the wave capture drones for Post, which is going to be from I think Aberdeen up to on Shetland. The bottom left is a hydrogen powered plane. Well, it is the new post office drone that is actually being used between mainland and Hoy, so it takes the small parcels off. So we've got a lot going on, and for a little place there's a lot of good momentum. And there we go. That was my very rapid run through, if that's all right. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I really appreciate that. I'm going to hand over to Matt and the others to allow some facilitation. But I just want to add two things. Firstly, if you're a community group here and you want to share your story at a future cafe, please let us know in the chat.